Now, I'm going to be talking about a different kind of data. Just like we care a lot about testing the effectiveness of certain voter turnout interventions like calling and canvassing and postcards and digital ads, we also want to measure our organizational efficiency. And as we've looked at each phase of EVP over time, we have always made sure to maintain both that effectiveness and efficiency. And we're at a crucially important moment, not only in our country's time, but also in our organization's time. And the second big sort of discussion that we want to have at the event this evening is what this next phase of the Environmental Voter Project is going to entail. First, let's see what got us here. For those of you who don't know, we started the Environmental Voter Project almost 10 years ago to the day. Now, we didn't really start it, it was a proof of concept, but on October 1st in 2015, we launched a 15-month proof of concept in Boston, Massachusetts, testing, hey, could we accurately identify non-voting environmentalists and then prove that we can get them to vote? And could we do it in elections big and small? And we killed it. We knocked it out of the park. And so in 2017 and 2018, we launched for good. January 1st, 2017 was our true launch. We rapidly went into 6 states to see, okay, let's see if we can attract volunteers, raise the money to do this stuff that we already know worked in a small pilot program, and have it work at a much larger scale in more states and in bigger elections, like, say, the 2018 midterm. And once again, we killed it. Then we were off to the races, expanding and excelling. We wanted to be able to get to more and more states. We wanted to ramp up our budgets. We wanted to recruit thousands more volunteers and rigorously experiment to make sure that our messages were always working and that we were always being both effective and efficient. Now, why is this important? It's important because since our beginning, EVP has grown responsibly and consistently over time. And in a boom and bust ecosystem where most voter engagement nonprofits have had a lot of trouble over the past few years, this responsible growth has not only been pretty unique, but it's been really good for all of you as donors and volunteers, because responsible growth means efficiency. We haven't been distracted, and we feel very grateful for this. We haven't been distracted by layoffs and restructuring and then rebuilding and then reorganizing and then refocusing. And that has allowed us to just focus on creating new voters. That's where this laser focus on effectiveness and efficiency can get us, and it's where that responsible growth can get us. But as we've been looking at the data, which, as I think you know, EVP always does, we've discovered something pretty extraordinary, which is right now, in the fall of 2025, the most responsible thing that we as an organization can do is double or maybe even triple our size. And I know that sounds weird. I imagine some of you are probably rolling your eyes like, oh, wow, a nonprofit that wants to get bigger. Surprise, surprise. But as I think many of you probably know, we don't have trouble saying no to people. There have probably been many of you who have asked us, hey, why don't you expand into this state or that state where we could honestly have gotten a lot more contributions? And we've said no, because our data told us that we wouldn't have as big an impact as some other organizations could. Or there have been some of you who have said, oh, why don't you do this method of voter contact or that method of voter contact, which, let's face it, would have gotten us more volunteers and more donations. And we've said no, because we've looked at these randomized control trials that Shannon was talking about, and we haven't seen that those methods of contact actually work. We're not scared of turning down money. We are happy to say no, because we remain laser focused on being effective and efficient. But right now, our data is screaming at us that we need to say yes to getting really big, really fast. And there are three reasons why. And after I give you those reasons, I'm going to go through some slides detailing these points. First, it's easy. It's easy. We think we can double or even triple the amount of our expenditures without having to hire a single new person. Two, it's efficient. As I will show you over to the next slides, we think we can spend almost 3 times as much over the next year and a half with only increasing the cost of getting an additional vote by a teeny little bit. So to put it another way, every dollar we spend to get a vote over time gets more expensive, right? Spend $1 million to create X number of voters. If you spend $5 million, maybe you won't get 5X, maybe you'll only get 4.5X or 4X voters. Well, what we've realized is we're nowhere close to the point where we start losing that efficiency. And then the third reason why we think now is the perfect time for us to expand and expand rapidly is it meets the moment. I mean, you don't need me to tell you that the democracy crisis and the climate crisis are spiraling out of control. And when you've got proven results, an ability to scale, and the opportunity to use these proven results at scale right now, not next year, not next presidential, but right now, well, then I would claim it would be irresponsible not to. And so this is why over the next 16 months, you're going to be hearing us talking a lot about how we are trying to get bigger. I don't necessarily mean in more states. I mean in the existing states where we are. Okay, so let's walk through why we think this. First off, just at a very top level, we are an enormously, extraordinarily efficient organization. Just looking at last year, but you can see all of our annual reports, and it always ends up looking like this. But if we could put a link to our most recent annual report in the chat, you'll see. We spent 91% of our expenditures on either mobilizing voters or identifying the voters that we were going to immobilize. We spent very, very little on management, administration, and fundraising. What goes into those voter turnout expenditures? Well, 5 sets of things. I'm not going to go into an enormous amount of detail on this slide. Hopefully you'll be able to see the information. Volunteer phone calls. Just because they're volunteers doesn't mean that it's free. Digital ads, both display, video, and it's not in there, but audio ads as well. The volunteer postcards that Shannon was discussing. Volunteer canvassing, and direct mail. Now, I want to be clear. We have the capacity to scale up all 5 of these methods of voter contact pretty darn efficiently. We would be happy to get 10,000 more volunteers in the door in the next month. Maybe we couldn't handle that without hiring, someone, but like we could handle it pretty darn well. Same thing with ramping up volunteer canvassing and to a slightly lesser extent, the postcards. But what is really, really easy to scale up is digital ads and direct mail. And this is why I was alluding to earlier that we think we can double or even triple our expenditures without having to hire a single person. You know how we ramp up our direct mail and digital ad program? Me typing a few extra zeros and hitting return on my keyboard. That's pretty much it. It takes almost no additional time or energy from the organization. And we're seeing this in all of our data because in some elections we go small, in some elections we go big, and we can measure the comparative impact when we do that. And we see we have enormous room for growth that doesn't require a lot of friction, and it doesn't require hiring a lot of people. Okay, I want to spend some time on this slide because I think it's really, really important. The presidential election, the next presidential is in 3+ years, so we're not thinking about that yet. But when we look at three categories of elections, municipal elections, odd year statewide elections like the ones coming up this fall, and midterm elections, we see three lines that kind of move in unison, right? And so the way you read this graph is along the bottom here, that's the amount of money we spend per target voter. Let's say we identify 50,000 targets in New York City. Well, on average, if we spend about $1 per target voter, we could expect to be solely responsible in our randomized control trials for creating a certain number of voters. And then at the end, we do some very easy division and we see, okay, we were responsible for creating this many voters and we spent this much. That means it cost us about 20 bucks to create an additional vote. And it's a little bit more expensive to do that in statewide elections because the higher the baseline level of turnout is, the more expensive and harder it is to get someone to vote. And it's even more expensive to create a new voter for midterm elections. But you'll see there's something really interesting here, which is the more we spend per target voter, regardless of the kind of election that it is, it doesn't start moving up. It doesn't start getting really expensive to create an additional voter until you get in this $2 to $2.50 range per voter. We think this is really important information, and we dug through a lot of data to get it. But let me show you where we currently are. Typically now, we are spending in this range. Some elections, depending on the type of election, we're spending 10 to 15 cents per target voter. Others, if it's a really important election, we're spending closer to $1.50, $1.75 per voter. But our average is right in there. It's less than $1 per voter, which is way to the left on this sort of plateau of efficiency. We think we can get much further to the right. We can spend much closer to $2 per target voter before we start losing efficiency. This is where we want to be. We want to be spending as much as possible before getting to the point where, you know what, it starts getting more and more and more expensive to create an additional vote. We think this is the sweet spot that we need to be in, especially because it's so easy to scale up to get there and because of the enormity of the moment. What does this mean? Well, if we look at odd years, 19, 21, 23, and 25, it means we still have room to almost double what we have raised this year and spend it efficiently over the next 7 weeks. Looking ahead to next year, it means we think that we could efficiently spend $11.1, $11.2 million without moving beyond that area of efficiency, that sort of range of efficiency there. And what would this get us? Well, first, just to be clear, what we are saying is this next phase, it is a rapid growth phase. We want to 2 to 3 times X the amount of money that we spend. So that means we need to raise double or triple the amount that we have been raising before. And what would this get us? Well, this fall, just using results that we have already gotten in the few elections where we've spent that much, we could add over 8,000. We could be solely responsible for adding over 8,000 brand new voters to the electorate in New Jersey, over 5,000 in the statewides in Georgia and Virginia. Looking at next year in some really important elections, we could make an enormous difference. And again, I'm not projecting based on results that we've never gotten before. This is based on results that we have gotten in the past, just when we're able to spend over further to the right of that graph. We know we can do this if we get the money. And so I want to encourage you again, please don't just invest generously. Take a moment to go into the chat click the link and make a donation. You can donate by credit card. There's also a link to donate by check, wire, or stock donation.